Hey guys, so today we're going to talk about Veiltails. These are from my chocolate orange Veiltail spawn or line. This is an F2 line, so I bred the parents. And then I took the parents and bred these guys. So they're my second generation. And my goal with this line was to have dark body bicolor, so dark, hopefully brown or black bodies with orange fins. I also got a lot of guys like this guy, which are usually referred to as pineapples, where their body is predominantly orange or yellow, and they have the black edging to their scales. This guy's a little bit stressed out. When I put them in here, this one immediately swam through the divider. And so I had to rescue him out from the other side before they started fighting. Because once again, I think I have the wrong piece of glass in here and they're trying to sneak through. There they go. But, so with this line, we're going to be working on an F3 or a third generation. I already have the female picked out and we'll look at her in a second, but first we'll talk about who my picked male is. And I have to preface this by saying this was probably the hardest choice out of all of the videos that you'll see, all the pairs that I'm doing for this round of spawning. I have gone back and forth between these two males about 10 times now, and I even made this entire video and picked one male, and that was going to be the male. And then I was on my computer looking at pictures I've taken, because before I do these videos I take pictures of all these fish, because I like to have pictures of my pairs for posterity, just in case their fins get torn up or whatever. I still have a good picture of them, so I can, compare them to their babies. The dryer's making a banging sound. Hopefully it's not going to be too much of a problem. But, so I made the whole video, and then I was looking at the pictures of these guys afterwards, and I changed my mind yet again. More than likely, whichever one of these guys I don't end up breeding, I'm still going to keep him, and I will probably use him for breeding at a later date or as a backup. So these guys are both extremely nice, and it was a really hard decision. So as we've been talking about in this series, we're looking at how I pick my pairs and how they stand up against the IBC standards. So I have the standards printed out, and we've been going over their faults and stuff according to the standard. Now this line is a little bit different because I'm kind of not going totally with the standard. There's some things in the Veiltail standard that I don't like, or my preference is different. And while it's a fault according to the standard, it's what I like. And sometimes it is okay to breed what you like, even if it's not quite to standard. I still intend on showing the fish from this line, and I expect they'll do fairly well. But they do have faults. If you're looking at them strictly from a standard point, they have a lot of faults. One of the main faults they have is I like a spade-shaped tail, which means I like their tails to be pointed like this. This guy's is even more pointed than his, but he's not wanting to flare right now. And we call that a spade shape. It's where it gets wider at the base of the tail, and then it narrows down into a point. The standard calls for more of an oval-shaped tail. Now this is the actual standard, and you can see the diagram. It calls for the tail to be kind of rounded. Personally, I like the spade. I don't think it's a fault, but the way the standard is written currently, they don't make any allowances for different shapes in the caudal. So something I probably will do is write to the judging board and be like, hey, I think you should make a change so it's okay for the tail to have a point at the end, as well as, or instead of being round. So that's one of the faults they have that I personally like, that aren't quite too standard for the IBC. Another thing is that the standard calls for the tail to droop down. So again, we look at the diagram, you can see it spreads out, but it immediately starts drooping down, and the end of the tail is below the body. I like mine to kind of fly like flags. So I like their tails to open up straight, and the end of the tail is pretty much center with the body. I like it that. I don't have a problem with the droopy fins, but I just personally like it when they open and they stick straight out, which these guys do. You can see there's a tiny bit of droop, but for the most part, they stick straight out when they flare instead of drooping. And finally, and the most severe fault is that the dorsals on Veiltail should be narrow, like this guy. He has a correct dorsal. It should be sickle-shaped or teardrop-shaped, and very narrow. It should not be more than half of the length of the anal fin, or width of the anal fin, I should say. This guy has a very wide dorsal. I do get occasional double tails popping up in this line, and I personally really like this trait. This guy is not putting on a show for us for some reason, so you can't really see how wide his dorsal is. I'll insert a picture and show you what he looks like when he's really flared out. Today he's just not in the mood, but it's not correct, and it's actually a severe fault by the IBC standard. But I like the wide dorsal, and I actually would really like this line to produce some double tail Veiltails, because you don't see double tail Veiltails, and it would be cool to enter some into variations into shows, because you just don't see them. They're not rare by any means. You can find double tail Veiltails at pet stores every now and again, but as far as like in the show circuit, nobody's showing double tail Veiltails. So that's something I would really like to see from this line. So those faults aside, the ones that are faults in the IBC's eyes but not really faults in my eyes, we'll look at some of their other pros and cons, and we'll start with this guy since he's the one that's actually showing off. When we put the female in, hopefully that guy will perk up, but this male has a nice top line, but his body is a little bit narrow. You can see where his body meets his fins. His body is kind of more narrow, whereas this guy, it's still a little bit narrow, but he's thicker overall than this one. And the narrow bodies is a big issue in Veiltails due to them being mass bred, a lot like very similar to crown tails, how I mentioned in the crown tail video that the narrow bodies is a big problem with crown tails. With Veiltails, no one was really breeding them for form or for standard. They were just kind of mass produced to go to pet stores, and when you're not really paying attention to form, you start losing some things like a nice thick body. So that's one of the things I've been working to improve in this line, and I will say that the bodies have improved. This F2 spawn was much better than the F1. I didn't have nearly as many that had super narrow bodies, and his isn't super narrow by any means, but it is slightly more narrow than this guy. This guy does have the color I'm looking for. In fact, I would actually like him to be even darker. He is a little bit washed out now. He does get a slightly bit darker, but I am really looking for an almost black body, super, super dark brown. And I haven't quite got there yet. The grandfather to these fish was the ideal color, but he didn't have the best form. And so I've been picking fish and breeding and selecting for form as well as color. And it's slow going, but we're making progress as far as the color I want. He does have a little bit of iridescence, which is that blue color in his body and in his fins. Not nearly as much as this guy, but it is there. He has a nice shaped caudal. He does spread to 180 degrees, which you want the tail to do. You want it to open to 180 and then taper off down to a point or to a rounded end, depending on what standard you're looking at. As we said before, this guy does have a correct dorsal shape. You want a sickle shape or a teardrop shape dorsal, which he has. His dorsal is also narrow. It's not very wide compared to the anal fin. So that's all correct. He also has single tipped ventrals, which are correct, and they're not super full. So on the whole, this guy should have been my pick, and he was up until literally last night. I really like this fish. I think he would be a really good father and produce really nice fish. But there's some things about this guy that I just love. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I just have to use this one. Even though he's not the color I really want, and he's got more iridescence, there's three things I really, really love about this fish that puts him just slightly, and I mean slightly, over this guy in my opinion. The first one is his wide dorsal, which we talked about, and you can see how wide it is compared to this guy. He has the double tail influence, and I'm more likely to get double tails in the spawn by breeding him instead of him. The other thing I really like about this guy is the intensity of his orange. If we back up and look at these side by side, you can see just how much more vivid the orange is on this guy than this one. This guy still has really great orange, but this guy's orange is just super intense. And when I put the picture up, whenever I insert it into the video, you will see or have seen like just how bright that orange is. And that's not a touched up picture. It just, he's really that bright. So the wide dorsal, the really intense orange he has, even though he doesn't have the dark body like I want, that really intense orange is intriguing. And then finally, the last thing is that he has really nice shaped fins. He's not flaring for us right now. See if a mirror works. Hopefully when I put the female in, we talk about the female, he'll start flaring for us. But he has a really, really nice shaped caudal when he actually does flare. He looks like he's thinking about it. So this, as I said, probably the hardest decision. Both of these guys have faults compared to the standard, but when I'm breeding, I look at the standard, but I also take into account my personal preference. And with Veiltails, they've made a comeback or a reappearance on the show scene. So when I say they're new to the show scene, it's not that they've never been shown before. Veiltails used to be the premier show betta, but then the deltas came and the half moon came, and they just kind of lost favor among the show breeders because everybody was breeding for half moons. In the last like 5 years, there's been a renewed interest in love in Veiltails, and we're starting to see Veiltails in all kinds of colors and People are breeding them and showing them, and that's how we got the standard back for the Veiltail, and classes for shows and stuff. So while the Veiltail is not new, it's gotten kind of a new surge in popularity, and the standard that we have in the IBC is relatively new because it was added as a trial a few years ago, and now it is officially the standard. But the fact that it's new leaves room to make improvements and suggestions. The standards do change. They're not fixed forever. And if you feel strongly about something, you can petition the judging board and be like, hey, I think Veiltail should be able to have a point on their fins. And they'll take it under advisement, and maybe they'll make an amendment. Maybe they won't, but you can try. So that's just a little bit about, you know, you don't always have to breed to standard. It's a guideline, and you choose your preference and go from there. So I have no intention of trying to get rid of this tail type that I've created here. I didn't create it, but this is what I got. And I'm gonna continue to encourage this tail that they have where it's pointed and it doesn't droop too much, because I just like it. I like the sharpness of it. So let me put the camera down for a minute. I'll take this guy out and put the female in, and we'll look at the female and talk about why I chose her. Okay, here's our female. And the first thing you'll notice is, again, she does not have the color I'm looking for. And you might be like, Jackie, what are you talking about? Your goal is chocolate bicolors and you're picking the wrong fish. Well, for me, form comes before color. It just does. There are times when I will sacrifice form for color, but in this instance, I still like the color these guys are, and I'm willing to see where this pair takes me. If I don't get any bicolors from them, then I still have the other male as a backup, and I can basically start over and try to get more bicolors. But this female by and far had the best form out of the females I had in the spawn. I didn't get very many females to choose from. It was a very male heavy spawn. And this female has the nice thick body that I want. And she has a wide dorsal. She does have a little bit of a bumpy top line, if it'll focus. But it's not super bad by any means. Just something to watch out for in the fry, and try to find the smoothest top lines out of the fry that I can. She has really nice spread. As you can see, her tail does open to close to, if not 180. I've seen her tail open to 180 before. Right now it's looking like a little less, but they can stretch their fins out from time to time. Her anal fin is nice, and I didn't really talk about the anal fins for these males. Both of the anal fins are correct. You want the back end to be longer than the front end and have a point and be slightly rounded at the front. So all of that is correct with this one. She again has the pineapple orange thing going on, where she's predominantly orange, but the edges of her scales are black, which kind of gives her that dirty look to her body. Her orange isn't quite as intense as this guy. But she is also washed out in this video. She does get a little bit darker than what you see. So really, there wasn't very much of a discussion with the female. It was always pretty much going to be her, because she has the nice thick body. She's got good finnage. She's got a wide dorsal. So even though she's not the color I like, or I like the color, she's not the color I originally went out and intended to make. All the other boxes are checked. So it really wasn't a big decision between these two. Now she is a little bit bigger than him, and that may end up being a problem. We're just going to have to see. Usually, if it's just a slight size difference, it's not too big of a deal. And even though on camera she's looking like ginormous next to him, in person it's not that big of a size difference. I just wish this guy would flare for us so you could really see his shape, but he's just not having a good day today. He did not want to flare. As I said before, I did this entire video yesterday and they were flaring and I took pictures and all that, and he's probably just still tired. I might not have carded him. He might have been flaring earlier this morning. But whatever reason, he just is not into flaring. I'm moving the light over a little bit, see if maybe he'll perk up, but I'm hoping for the next generation, which will be the F3, that I'll get some females that have good form like this, but a darker body color. There he goes. See, sometimes they just don't want the bright light. And you can see how pointed his anal fin is. I mean, his caudal fin. And you can see there his big, wide dorsal. It's still the correct shape. It's kind of a sickle or teardrop, but it's just has a really wide base, and that's not what the IBC standard wants. But I'm hoping that these two, both having that kind of double tail influence in their dorsal fins, will throw more double tails, and I can work with them. But I'm interested to see what I get as far as color as well from these guys. The F1, I got a wider range of color. I got marbles, I got yellow, I got black marble, I got black black lace. So there's a big variety. And then I got oranges like this. I got some oranges like this. I got some oranges with no black on the body. And then I got some dark bodied ones as well. So it's a big variety in color. In this spawn, I got 100% orange, which is unusual. Normally in any orange spawn, you get some red, you get some yellow, and you get some orange. This spawn was 100% orange, and the only thing that was really different was the level of black they had, or the intensity of the orange. Some were super intense like this, some a little bit less intense, some with a lot of black on their bodies, and some a little bit less like this guy. So I'm interested to see what colors we get. Are we going to bring back yellows and marbles and stuff like that, or are we going to get more straight orange? Another problem that's frequently found when breeding for orange or yellow is that if you continue to breed orange to orange or yellow to yellow, you will wash out the color. So it's another big reason I picked this guy with his really intense color, because I want to try to avoid washing out that color if at all possible. So we will see in the fry if we get more good intense orange, or if it starts to wash out, at which point we'll need to consider doing an outcross to maybe a red male, to help bring back some of that intensity to that color. So thanks for watching, guys. I'm glad we finally got this guy to perk up. This guy's name is Caution because he looks like a caution, like the traffic cones. He's just super orange. I don't normally name my fish, but sometimes they do get nicknames just by chance. So, as always, if you need to get in touch with me, if you're interested in buying fish, you can find me on Facebook. My link is in the description, and I also left a link in the description for the IBC standard, so you can go and see how your fish stack up against the standard. Just remember that it's just a guideline, and if what you want doesn't quite fit the standard, doesn't mean that you shouldn't breed it. Just go forward with a goal in mind and a reason behind your goal, and you'll be successful. Alright, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.